In the 22nd century, the medical rescue ship Nightingale is on a routine space patrol. Benjamin struggles to catch some sleep, but the ship's AI, Sweetie, wakes him up to play chess. In another room, Jerzy and Danica are handling personal matters. Captain Marley records a deep analysis of Tom and Jerry, while Evers conducts a health check on Nick, a former addict. A robot tries to assist with their tasks, and Nick remarks on its outdated technology. Evers explained that Marley liked old things. Evers advised Nick to try fitting in socially, and he played a few rounds of cards with Benjamin. Later, he told Evers about his progress and wondered why she hated him so much. Evers explained that she hated addicts because they destroyed everything they touched. Sweetie triggered the alarm when they received a distress signal. Everyone rushed to the stations to check the signal, but it had weakened after 5 days of transmission. This was a direct call, not a signal from the coordination unit, which they were not authorized to receive. The signal came from Titan 37, an ice mining station far from the colony station. Sweetie reported that it was a damaged moon, knocked out of orbit, meaning there was gravitational instability in the area. The mining crew had been evacuated 5 years ago, making the situation even stranger. When they scanned to identify the source, Sweetie discovered that the signal was from Carl Larson, Evers' abusive ex. Because this moon is over 3,000 light-years away, they would have to jump through space to reach it. After plotting the course, the team stripped down and hurried into stabilization pods without offering any explanation. Marley told Evers to use his pod while he took another. Once everyone was secured, the ship initiated a space jump using plasma acceleration. A dazzling beam of light propelled the ship across the void, and within seconds they arrived at Titan 37. Suddenly, alarms blared again, and to their horror, they discovered Marley's pod had malfunctioned, fusing his skin with the polyglass. He now looked like a monster. Marley was still alive, and Evers wanted to provide medical care, but at that moment the ship was struck by debris from the moon. Sweetie announced that their fuel tank had been punctured, and the ship was entering a high-gravity zone. Despite the violent shaking, Evers, Jerzy, and Danica worked to rescue Marley, while Nick and Benjamin rushed to the control room. There, they discovered the engines were also damaged, fuel was depleting rapidly, and Titan orbited a massive blue giant star, intensifying the gravitational pull. This meant the ship was plummeting fast. The Nightingale began to fall, and Sweetie reported that the engines weren't powerful enough to break free. Nick had to disable the autopilot and switch to manual controls to buy them more time. Even so, the team couldn't open Marley's pod, and he begged them to end his suffering. Danica objected, but Evers ignored her and ended Marley's life to free him from his suffering. At the same time, Nick used the engines and a large amount of fuel to move the ship away and stop its freefall. Nick then reconnected with Sweetie, who reported they had lost 82% of their fuel. The ship would keep falling for another 17 hours, and the space jump engines would take almost exactly that long to recharge. When the time came, they would have only an 11-minute window to escape. Sweetie then started searching for Carl on Titan, while Nick brought Evers some liquor to drink in Marley's memory. They eventually shared an intimate moment. Meanwhile, Jerzy surprised everyone by filing for a childbearing permit, something notoriously difficult to obtain. Danica had previously expressed a desire to have children, but was now unsure. Later, Benjamin called Nick and Evers to inform them that the vent systems weren't regulating properly, which was why Marley had died. Evers realized Marley must have seen the warning on the screen, which was why he asked her to switch pods. Suddenly, Sweetie detected a small transport ship leaving Titan and attempted to contact its pilot, but there was no response. The ship was approaching the Nightingale rapidly, so the team rushed to prepare protective gear for the imminent collision. The Nightingale shuddered as the small ship docked, and a hatch opened to reveal a pilot collapsing in flames. Jerzy quickly used a fire extinguisher to put out the flames while Evers checked on the man, removing his helmet to realize he wasn't Carl. They moved the man to the medical bay and conducted scans, discovering an unusual growth in his bone structure. His bones seemed to be hardening on their own, but otherwise he was completely healthy. Evers then informed Nick that this wasn't the real Carl Larson, but the man bore a striking resemblance, leading her to speculate he might be Carl's son. Meanwhile, Danica left the medical bay to gather supplies, and upon returning, she found the man wandering naked. He introduced himself as Troy, and immediately began flirting with Danica, leaving her unsure how to respond. The team debated what to do next, as there were now 6 people but only 5 pods. Nick volunteered to stay behind, suggesting the others could send a rescue ship after their space jump. Evers then checked on Troy, who explained he had been alone on Titan and confirmed that Carl Larson was his father. Troy revealed Carl had died 3 years ago, and admitted he believed his father had been a bad person. He contacted the Nightingale directly because Carl had taught him that, if in trouble, Evers was the most trustworthy person to seek help from. Apparently, Carl had also apologized for not being a better partner to Evers. After Evers gave Troy a vitamin injection, Nick began interrogating him. Troy explained that he had come to Titan with a group of friends to scavenge, but when they found nothing, they left without him. He also revealed that Titan was rich in fuel, prompting Nick to announce plans to send a shuttle to gather supplies. However, Nick remained suspicious of Troy, and quietly asked Yerzy to search Troy's ship for anything suspicious before he boarded the shuttle. Yerzy noticed Troy continuing to flirt with Danica, which only made him more displeased. Inside Troy's ship, Yerzy used a scanner and detected something strange inside a box. He opened it and was startled to find a glowing purple object. After calling Nick, Yerzy touched the object and felt a bizarre sensation, so much so that he stuck his hand inside. He quickly pulled it out just before Nick arrived and swore he hadn't touched anything. They then brought the object onto the Nightingale, and Sweetie classified it as a high-risk biological hazard. Evers used a special device to control a robot, directing it to place the object into the quarantine zone. Troy admitted he had hidden it because he didn't want to share his treasure, but he recounted a story from 3 years ago. He had intercepted a strange signal from a miner, claiming they had discovered a peculiar object frozen in ice. Troy immediately gathered his friends and went to Titan, but when they arrived, all the miners had disappeared. Troy's friends thought he was lying and left, but Troy stayed behind, searching the mine until he found the mysterious object. He was certain it was of alien origin and now wanted to sell it to the government. He offered 5% to each team member if they helped him transport the object. An argument broke out as Troy and Yerzy wanted to keep the object, but the rest of the crew didn't trust it. Evers pointed out the strange development in Troy's bones, but he insisted he was born that way. In the end, Nick ordered the team to scan and document the object, but they would dispose of it once they reached safe space. Still suspicious of Troy's story, Nick instructed the others to prepare a rescue unit in case of trouble while he headed to the moon to collect fuel. Tensions rose as the shuttle began accelerating too quickly due to the strong gravity, but Nick used his piloting skills to regain control and land safely. He entered the elevator to descend into the mine, which was also affected by the intense gravity, but luckily he reached the bottom without any issues. Back on the Nightingale, Troy attempted to bond with Evers but mentioned Carl, which made her angry and walk away. Next, Troy sought out Danica and teased her about always having dark thoughts. He noticed her desire to have children and her doubts about whether Yerzy was the right father, so he flirted with her until she agreed to have fun with him. Meanwhile, Yerzy broke into the object's quarantine zone to touch it again and felt an overwhelming sense of joy. In the lab, Evers and Sweetie analyzed the object and discovered it was composed of extra-dimensional material beyond human comprehension. It was a 3-dimensional shell protecting matter from the 9th dimension, effectively a bomb capable of destroying the universe and creating a new one. The aliens who created it might have designed it for a random species to pick up and bring back to their solar system, thereby eliminating all competitors. Danica overheard Evers and Benjamin's conversation and rushed to check on Yerzy. She found him asleep against the object and gently led him away. When Evers examined Yerzy, she noticed the object had rejuvenated him and made him mentally much stronger. Nick was horrified to discover the bodies of the workers and no fuel in the mine. There were also corpses in spacesuits, implying they were Troy's friends. Nick contacted the Nightingale, and the call was answered by Troy, who confessed to killing everyone to keep the treasure for himself and now wanted to kill Nick. Troy used the Nightingale's system to infiltrate the mines and control the machinery, causing it to start destroying the entire structure. Nick had to move quickly to avoid the machines and break the glass to escape the mine as fast as possible, while a vehicle pursued him. He made it into the elevator just in time, but Troy was still able to track him through the security cameras, mocking him about his past addiction, admitting he had once been the same. Furious, Nick punched the camera before running out of the elevator, only to see the shuttle leaving without him. At this moment, Danica entered the room and discovered Troy was piloting the shuttle. He tried to explain that he was helping Nick, but she didn't believe him, and he jerked the controls, throwing them at her. Troy then forcibly kissed Danica, prompting her to react by hitting him and spitting in his face. Troy responded by punching her in the face before throwing her into space, opening the airlock to eject her out. Danica died as she drifted through space. Troy's wounds healed by themselves. Meanwhile, Yerzy was trying to access the object again, but the password had been changed. Suddenly, Troy appeared, using his supernatural strength to destroy the keyboard. He opened his hand, revealing a purple light emanating from it, proving he had also touched the object. Yerzy tried to run, but Troy threw him across the room, yelling about Danica. Terrified, Yerzy grabbed a gas canister and started hitting Troy, but he didn't feel any pain. Terrified, Yerzy grabbed a gas canister and started hitting Troy, but he didn't feel any pain. Then Troy shoved Yerzy out into space. In the control room, Benjamin found the damaged control panel and asked Sweetie to contact Yerzy or Danica, but she couldn't locate them. He immediately ran to find Troy, who was trying to get close to Evers again. Benjamin didn't hesitate, using a grappling hook to shoot at Troy, sending him flying, and then ran with Evers to another room to get guns. Once armed, Benjamin searched for Troy and was startled by a noise, but it turned out to be just a robot. When he turned back, he spotted Troy and immediately shot him in the head. However, Troy had shapeshifted and simply threw Benjamin into the isolation room after taking his gun. Desperate, Benjamin asked Sweetie to open the door to throw Troy into space, but Sweetie refused as she couldn't harm a human. Troy fired several shots at the door before starting to punch it forcefully until he broke it open. Then he threw Benjamin again, killing him instantly. Sweetie informed Evers of Benjamin's death, and Evers tried to contact Nick, but was unsuccessful. At that moment, Troy found her and finally confessed the truth. He was actually Carl, Evers' ex-boyfriend. The object had made him much younger, which is why Evers didn't recognize him. He had intentionally called the Nightingale to find Evers, hoping to impress her with his new powers and that they could try again. Carl kept Evers from leaving, but when he was about to use force, Nick announced his presence over the communication channel. The rescue return unit Nick had prepared earlier had activated, and he was on his way back. Carl began arguing with him, and while he was distracted, Evers grabbed a laser gun and shot Carl in the eye. As Carl used his healing powers to recover, Evers ran to the docking area, preparing to greet Nick. But unexpectedly, Carl shoved her aside and shot a grappling hook into the open door, pulling someone in. However, it was just an empty suit used as a decoy. At that moment, Nick appeared with two mechanical tools to fight Carl. A battle broke out, and with his powers, Carl quickly defeated Nick, disarming him and throwing him around. Evers grabbed an axe and struck Carl's back, creating an opening for Nick to retrieve his tools and sever Carl's arm. Nick then shoved Carl into a collar and locked him in a cage. Evers and Nick ran to check on the object. Carl pulled the axe from his back and broke out of the cage. Sweetie detected that the object was becoming unstable and that the engine was fully charged. They had 10 minutes to jump. Carl found his arm and easily reattached it before heading to the hatch room, where he began destroying the compartments and attempting to get the object. However, Carl discovered that Nick had moved the object, and he followed the trail only to find a robot dressed in Nick's suit as a trap. Carl recovered the object and found a bomb inside. Evers ordered the robot to raise its middle finger and detonated the bomb. Carl was blown away in a massive explosion, and half of the Nightingale was damaged. Sweetie calculated that the object was reacting to the gravity of the blue star and creating a supernova, which would reach Earth in 51 years. This could either destroy all life on Earth or elevate humanity to a new level of existence. With only one compartment left, the couple decided to enter it together, despite the high risk of having two people in one compartment. When the supernova completed and exploded, the Nightingale finally made the jump, and the couple returned to Earth. As they looked at each other, they realized that each had one of the other's eyes. Sweetie scanned them and confirmed they were fine, also announcing that Evers was pregnant. However, she couldn't determine if it was the result of their earlier naughty moments or a side effect of the shared jump. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for watching.